All right, everyone, congratulations to Parler for getting its first hit piece from CNN, because there are different steps of hit pieces. The first hit pieces you'll get are from the little poop butt people, like a Jared Holt, a Becca Lewis or something. They'll write like a little script about how your website is far right or somehow problematic because one person who got banned on YouTube is using your site and therefore you're a Nazi too by extension. Then you move up through like the low-level mollusk media, the missing link media, like Salon. And then maybe HuffPost, Vox, something like that. And then you've hit the big time when the SPLC or ADL puts a hit piece out, and they have for most of the alt-tech sites. And then like the pinnacle is for the legacy media to get called in. They've called in the big guns. So now you have a CNN hit piece, a link in the description, about Parler being an alternative reality. An alternative reality for people who refuse to accept that the election was not fraudulent. Despite the fact that it existed long before the election, I will add. I thought that it was just a Nazi site. Well, now you're saying it's basically like the Trump Twitter. So what gives? Is it a MAGA site, like, populism and U.S. civic nationalism, or is it full of, like, Germans from the 40s? I don't know. I guess they've formed a coalition. Socialists from another country have formed a coalition with U.S. populist nationalists. This makes a lot of sense. See, this is Propaganda 101. But anyway, and there's a second link in the description of my account, actually, on Parler. I'm almost at 40,000 people following me there. At some point, I'll have more people following me there than I will on Twitter, probably. It's sort of like, more people are going to end up following me on BitChute than YouTube probably a couple years from now. Considering the differential growth rates, I wouldn't even be the least bit surprised. And alt-tech is the place to be, so I'm setting myself up for the long game as opposed to winning a few short-term battles, just so you know. The CNN hit piece is basically, the people there are in La La Land. These are people who got tired of Twitter telling them what was true. They got tired of billionaires determining what they should believe in and decided to have what people were having years ago on Twitter, which is a private conversation between multiple individuals, irrespective of what's believed in by billionaires. That's the whole point of Twitter. The whole reason why Twitter became large is people could discuss things as individuals. There was no coercion involved. There's no algorithmic distortion on the site for the first, 10 years of its existence. Twitter began purging users. Twitter began fact-checking things, often erroneously, and it has done so erroneously. Sometimes this is a claim about election fraud is disputed even when you're not claiming election fraud. Their system is all sorts of wonky. You know that there's shadow banning on Twitter. This has been proven over and over, despite Dorsey pretending at first that it doesn't happen. Now Twitter openly admits to it, number one, and brags about it, number two. Twitter has been censoring users, manipulating public conversations in favor of billionaires, in favor of political and social movements and beliefs that benefit the 1%. It's very funny to see people on the left joining with Jack Dorsey hand in hand with love beads and his shitty college weed smoking bullshit and saying, well, what a good job you're doing suppressing these evil extremists. Oh my God, they've got their own website. You told them to build their own website. Build your own PayPal, they said. Well, Subscribestar exists. They tried with Patreon, but they managed to take that one down, mainly because it was U.S. based. It's interesting how the U.S. Legal and technological system has become so burdensomely censorious that most often alternatives to big U.S. sites have to be based outside of the U.S. There are sites right now that are looking down the barrel of a gun if 230 goes away and they're saying, hey, we have the ability, we're going to move overseas. Of course, if you happen to be a U.S. citizen, you can't simply move your site and be protected from with legal impunity. You'd have to give up your citizenship and gain it somewhere else. Unless you have a reasonable amount of money, you're probably not able to do that. Most of these sites will just close down or they'll sell out to the big guys. They'll sell out to big tech. Trump is making a huge tactical blunder, by the way, right now with the 230 argument. You don't need to repeal it. You need to reform and enforce it. You need to add the caveat that it applies to sites that act as platforms. If they don't act as platforms, fuck them. If Google doesn't want to be a platform, if it doesn't want to handle data in a fair manner because it's been acting as a platform forever, with Blogspot, with email, certainly with YouTube, then it shouldn't get those protections. Simple as that. And its competitors would have a massive legal advantage by being platforms. It would essentially coerce tech firms to simply respect free speech and expression. And that's it. That's all they have to do. Reform 230, you don't need to get rid of it. You get rid of it, it'll tear the internet apart. At least the US-based internet, the big heavy hitters of the next tech generation will all be foreign. Now, BitChute will be fine. Odyssey might not be. Subscribestar will be fine. Parler wouldn't exist. So Parler finally got its CNN hit piece, talking about how they're far right. People there don't believe the right way. It's funny to see the legacy tabloid media team up with the big tech sites to try to coerce people into certain ways of belief with the excuse of, oh, well, people that don't believe this way are dangerous. You should be afraid of them. You should be afraid of people who don't want to wear a hazmat suit to the grocery store. You should be afraid of people who question whether the election is 100% in integrity. Despite the fact that we ourselves have reported on voting machine vulnerabilities now for 20 years. No, just ignore our past reporting. It doesn't matter anymore. No, just here, go back to sleep, everyone. Well, see, people don't want to do that, and they certainly don't want Jack Dorsey breathing down their necks when they're having a fucking conversation on Twitter. There's no point to Twitter other than shitposting and collating out links. That's all it's for. It's fucking useless otherwise. Parler is basically the Twitter alternative that's not fucking around with people. So you can have a conversation, and I've seen leftists say, oh, they're banning leftists off of Parler. So much for that free speech shit. Who got banned? Name a name, and then tell me why they got banned. That's what I would like to see. Probably for spamming. Probably for threatening people. But see, leftists can do that on Twitter, and Jack Dorsey doesn't give a fucking goddamn shit. Parler will actually enforce what skeleton fucking crew rules it actually has. Whereas Twitter doesn't. Twitter has massive censorship and then selectively enforces it for political reasons. Because Jack Dorsey is a wannabe faux enlightened goddamn trust funder who wanders around at a Buddhist monastery mumbling to himself like goddamn Steve Jobs used to do, high on shrooms, and pretends that makes him better than you are. That's who runs Twitter. A fucking imbecile. That's about all. Peace out.